A black billionaire found his childhood nanny, working as a waitress. What he did next changed everything.
Behind every table, there's a story, and behind every smile, there's a secret. Welcome to the Black Line Stories. Subscribe the channel and let us know where are you watching us from.
What if the billionaire who built his empire on ambition and success discovered that the woman who once raised him, the one who loved him, like a mother, was now working as a waitress just to survive? Derek Blackwood stood at the pinnacle of success, a name synonymous with power and wealth. At 45, he was one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world, a black man who'd shattered every ceiling placed above him. His tech empire, Blackwood Innovations, dominated the industry with cutting-edge AI solutions, and his face graced the covers of Forbes and Time. His penthouse in Manhattan overlooks Central Park, a glittering testament to his ascent from a working-class neighborhood in Chicago to the elite circles of global influence. But beneath the tailored suits and confident smiles, Derek carried a void he couldn't name. His life was a whirlwind of boardroom battles, media interviews, and gala dinners. Yet something gnawed at him, a faint ache that no amount of success could silence. He dismissed it as stress, the price of being a titan in a world that rarely let men like him rise so high. Derek's childhood was a mosaic of grit and sacrifice. Born in a cramped apartment in Chicago's South Side, he grew up watching his parents, James and Evelyn Blackwood, toil endlessly. James worked double shifts as a factory worker, while Evelyn cleaned houses for wealthy families. Their love for Derek was fierce but distant, expressed through the food on the table and the roof over his head, rather than bedtime stories or warm embraces. They dreamed of a better life for their son, and every penny they saved went toward his education. Enter Clara Jackson, the woman who became the heartbeat of Derek's early years. Clara was hired as a nanny when Derek was 3, a soft-spoken woman with a radiant smile and eyes that held a quiet strength. She was in her 20s then, a single mother supporting her own daughter, Lena, on the meager wages the Blackwoods could afford. Clara didn't just care for Derek, she poured her soul into him. She taught him to read by flashlight when his parents worked late, bandaged his scraped knees, and sang him lullabies that soothed his fears. To Derek, Clara was more than a nanny. She was the mother his parents couldn't be. As Derek grew, so did his family's fortunes. James started a small construction business that boomed during Chicago's real estate surge in the 90s. By the time Derek was 10, the Blackwoods had moved to a sprawling house in the suburbs, leaving the South Side behind. But with their rise came a subtle shift. Evelyn, now mingling with affluent socialites, grew conscious of appearances. Clara, with her modest clothes and unpolished manners, no longer fit the image of their new life. One day, without warning, Clara was let go. Derek, only 11, came home from school to find her gone, her absence a gaping wound no one explained. "Clara had to move on, son," Evelyn said curtly when he asked. "We don't need her anymore." Derek's protests were ignored, and over time, Clara's memory faded, buried beneath the weight of his family's ambition and his own drive to succeed. He excelled in school, earned a scholarship to MIT, and built Blackwood Innovations from a dorm room startup to a global powerhouse. Clara became a distant echo, a fleeting image of warmth in a life now defined by cold, hard success. The day Derek walked into Rosie's diner was unremarkable at first. He'd been in Chicago for a tech conference, sealing a $2 billion deal. That would cement his company's dominance. But the victory felt hollow, and the city's familiar streets stirred something restless in him. Seeking a break from the sterile luxury of his hotel, he drove aimlessly until the diner's neon sign caught his eye. It was a whim, a pull towards something simple and real. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, the scent of greasy burgers and burnt coffee hitting him like a wave. The place was half empty, a mix of truckers and locals, nursing late-night meals. Derek slid into a booth, his Armani suit out of place among the vinyl seats and chipped formica tables. He scanned the menu, more out of habit than hunger, when a voice broke through the diner's hum. "What can I get started for you, sir?" Derek froze. The voice was older, weathered by time, but unmistakable. He looked up, and there she was. Clara. Her hair was streaked with gray, her face etched with lines of hardship, but her eyes still held that quiet warmth. She wore a faded waitress uniform, her name tag pinned crookedly to her apron. She didn't recognize him, her smile polite, but distant. "Clara," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Her smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face. "Do I know you?" "It's me. Derek. Derek Blackwood." The name hit her like a physical blow. Her hand trembled as she set down her notepad, her eyes searching his face. Recognition dawned, and with it, a flood of emotions. Joy, pain, and something Derek couldn't place. "Oh, my Lord," she whispered. "Little Derek, look at you." They stared at each other, the diner fading into the background. For Derek, it was as if the years had collapsed, and he was a boy again, safe in Clara's arms. But the moment was shattered by the sight of her worn-out shoes, the exhaustion in her posture, the reality of her life now. Guilt crashed over him like a tidal wave. How had this happened? How had the woman who'd raised him ended up here, while he lived in opulence? "Clara, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. She gave a small, tired smile. "Life, Derek. It keeps moving, whether you're ready or not." Before he could press further, a gruff voice called from the counter. "Clara, table 6 needs their check." She excused herself, leaving Derek reeling. He watched her move through the diner, her steps slow but steady, and a sickening realization took root. His family's wealth, his success, it had all come, at a cost, and Clara had paid it. Derek stayed until Clara's shift ended at midnight, nursing a cold cup of coffee. When she finally sat across from him, her apron folded neatly in her lap, he didn't know where to begin. The words tumbled out anyway. "Clara, I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know they let you go like that. I was just a kid. I should have done something." Clara's eyes softened. "You were a child, Derek. It wasn't your fault." But it felt like his fault. He learned that after being fired, she'd struggled to find steady work. Her daughter, Lena, had faced medical bills from a chronic illness, draining Clara's savings. She'd worked as a cleaner, a caregiver, and now a waitress, barely keeping her head above water. Yet there was no resentment in her voice, only a quiet acceptance that broke Derek's heart. "I want to help you," he said, leaning forward. "I can take care of you. A house, money, whatever you need. You'll never have to work again." Clara's face changed, a shadow crossing her features. "No, Derek," she said firmly. "I don't want your money." He blinked, stunned. "Why not? You deserve it. After everything you did for me. For us." "Derek," she interrupted, her voice steady but laced with pain. "You think money fixes what happened? Your family threw me out without a word. I gave them everything, my time, my love, my heart. And they discarded me like trash. Money can't erase that." The words hit like a blade. Derek opened his mouth to argue, but Clara continued, her voice rising with a strength he hadn't expected. "I loved you like my own, Derek, and I still do. But I won't take your Pity. I've got my pride, and I've made it this far without handouts. The conversation grew tense, raw. Derek tried to explain, to apologize, but Clara's pain was a wall he couldn't scale. She spoke of the years of hurt, the nights she'd cried, wondering why the Blackwoods had erased her. "It's not about the money," she said. "It's about being seen, about being valued." Derek sat back, his chest tight. For the first time, he saw the world through Clara's eyes. A world where his family's wealth had blinded them to her worth, where his own privilege had let him forget the woman who'd shaped him. He'd thought money was the answer, but Clara was teaching him otherwise. The next day, Derek couldn't focus. Clara's words echoed in his mind, forcing him to confront truths he'd buried. He dug into old family photo albums, finding pictures of himself with Clara, her holding him at his 5th birthday, her cheering at his school play. The memories brought tears to his eyes, and with them, a burning question. Why had his parents let her go so callously? He called his father again, this time demanding the truth. James sighed, his voice heavy with regret. "Son, it was a mistake. Your mother, she thought Clara was too close to you. She was jealous, Derek. She felt like Clara was taking her place as your mother. We were climbing, trying to fit into a world that didn't want us, and Clara didn't fit the image we were chasing. We were wrong, but we didn't know how to fix it." The revelation hit Derek like a punch. His mother's insecurity, her fear of being replaced, had cost Clara everything, and Derek, caught up in his own ambition, had never questioned it. The guilt deepened, but so did his resolve. He couldn't change the past, but he could honor Clara now. Not with money, but with something real. Derek returned to the diner, this time with a plan. He waited for Clara's break and asked her to sit with him. "I'm not here to offer you money," he said, his voice steady. "I'm here to ask for a chance to make things right." Clara eyed him warily. "What do you mean?" "I want you in my life again," he said. "Not as a nanny, not as a memory, but as family. I want to know you, Clara. I want to know Lena. I want to show you that you matter, that you always have." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. Derek pressed on, his voice breaking. "I've spent my life chasing success, thinking it would fill the hole inside me. But that hole is you, Clara. It's the love you gave me, the love I let slip away. I can't undo what my family did, but I can try to be the man you believed I could be." For a long moment, Clara was silent. Then slowly she reached across the table and took his hand. "You're still my Derek," she whispered. "You always will be." The dam broke. Derek wept, years of guilt and loss pouring out. Clara held his hand, her own tears falling. And in that moment, they were no longer Billionaire and Waitress, but a boy, and the woman who'd loved him like a mother. Over the next year, Derek and Clara rebuilt their bond. He visited her regularly, not at the diner, but at her small apartment, where he met Lena, now a nurse with Clara's fierce spirit. Derek was invited to Lena's birthday celebration, and Clara made a point to include him in family gatherings and traditions. He listened to their stories, shared his own, and slowly the years of distance began to dissolve. Derek also took action, but on Clara's terms. He set up a scholarship fund for Lena's nursing school, ensuring she could pursue advanced training without financial strain. He offered to help Clara retire, but she insisted on working part-time, saying, "I'm not done living yet." Instead, he made sure her apartment was renovated, her medical bills covered, and her life a little easier. All done quietly, with her consent. But the real change was in Derek. Clara's presence grounded him, reminding him of the values she'd instilled: kindness, loyalty, connection. He began shifting his company's focus, launching initiatives to support caregivers and low-wage workers, inspired by Clara's struggles. He spoke publicly about her, crediting her for his success in interviews and speeches, ensuring her story was heard. One evening, as they sat on Clara's porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset, Derek turned to her. "You saved me, Clara. Not just when I was a kid, but now." She smiled, her eyes crinkling. "That's what love does, Derek. It saves us all." Derek Blackwood was still a billionaire, but he was no longer defined by his wealth. Clara's love had reshaped him, teaching him that true success wasn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touched. As he walked through Chicago's streets, he carried her lessons with him, a beacon of hope in a world too often blinded by privilege. And in Rosie's diner, Clara still worked a few shifts, her smile as warm as ever. But now, when the bell jingled, and Derek walked in, she didn't just see a customer. She saw her son, come home at last.